Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls from all over the world, we're starting up a little bit early here. I guess the announcement just came in, or it might be coming in very soon. But they announced the rate hikes, and then Jerome Powell is going to come on at 2:30 Eastern, so about 24 minutes from now. So I've got it queued up for us to be able to watch this together, and it's bad news. It's bad news. We think that the Fed leaked some of the information. It's coming out that it's going to be probably 75 basis points. Now, a basis point is 1/100th of a percentage. So 0.75% is going to be the rate hike, which is crazy. It's extremely damaging. We've talked about this on stream quite a bit. A lot of people said, and I quote, let's see here. I've got some info pulled up. Jerome Powell dismissed the 75 basis point as not an option. The last time he spoke a month ago, he said it was not something the committee is actively considering. So I'm assuming, worst case scenario right now, I think what's going to happen is we're actually going to have multiple 75 basis point hikes. That's really my theory. And it's playing out pretty much exactly how we said it was going to play out, that this is going to destroy the U.S. economy. It's going to destroy the world economy. It's also going to destroy the confidence that people have in the U.S., the reserves, the global reserves across the world. About 50% of the global reserves are in the U.S. dollar. It's going to destroy that. And you're going to have a lot of people who are going to start waking up to the sad fact that things are about to get really, really bad. There's a lot of people that are just going about their daily lives right now. They're not going to be tuned into this announcement that happens at 2:30, and we'll do it live with Jerome Powell. They're not going to be tuned in, and they don't understand the absolute nuclear bomb that's about to hit. People in the service industries, people in the restaurant business, people in fuel and oil, people in commodities. It's just bad. It's just really bad. There's no way out of this except to increase production to levels that would destroy this. And we can't increase production to these levels because all these levels that we've been at for the past 2 or 3 years are completely artificial. They're going to blame it on Putin, but it's not. Here's how I would say it. You as a family, right? As a household, what do they tell you to do? They tell you to pay off all your debt, get all your debt paid off, and then save up expenses, at least 6 months of expenses in case something bad happens. But when it comes to the U.S. government, what's their plan? They don't pay off debt. They continue to spend out of control, and they're doing it in the name of altruism, and they're doing it in the name of helping their fellow man. But what's the point in helping your fellow man if the ship's just going to come crashing down? They want to blame everybody else. Yeah, SJ. And it's a scary thing. And for some reason, the rules that apply to us, the rules that say, hey, maybe you should put money away for a rainy day, that doesn't apply to them for some reason. A lot of the states are getting control of it. I watched DeSantis yesterday. They put a lot of money away for this. They've been planning for this for a long time. DeSantis says that we're going to get $5 to $6 nationally in terms of fuel, which means if you're in California, you're going to be paying $10 to $15. That's going to happen probably this summer. A lot of bad things are going to happen. You got two things that they're doing here. They're increasing the interest rates. So what does an increase in interest rates kind of do to the economy? Well, when you increase interest rates, what that happens, you start at the top, the Fed increases interest rates, and that increases the interest rates that banks, and the Fed sets this, that banks are allowed to lend to each other. So that's kind of step one. When you increase those rates trickle down through the hierarchy of banks all the way to the local communities. So things like car loans, things like lines of credit, things like home loans, all of these interest rates go up, right? So, and it also becomes more difficult to get credit because those interest rates are higher and the stakes are higher for the banks. They have to pass all that along to the customer. People are disincentivized to participate. So that's one. All right. So the interest rates are rising to try to slow the economy down. The second thing that they're trying to do is they're doing what's called right now quantitative tightening. So quantitative easing is when they release money into the ecosystem. Okay. And I kind of use this as a very, very rough example of what that actually looks like. And it's obviously much more complex than this. However, when you, let's say, like yesterday, I talked about the United States giving every U.S. citizen $500,000 with the stipulation that you have to spend that money on a Bentley. So you've got every American in the United States trying to purchase a Bentley, and eventually they're all sold out. And then what happens? The price of Bentley skyrocket because there is no supply. Okay. So that's kind of what inflation is. When they're releasing all this money and the interest rates are really low and they're encouraging spending, what you see happen is all these goods get bought up, and there's an artificial kind of supply crisis that's created in these supply chains, and it causes the price of goods to soar. That's what we're seeing now. All this stimulus, all this artificial growth that we have seen. Stock market up 18%, 20% over 2 years, 2.5 years. While we were all locked up at home, do you guys think that's legit? Do you think that growth is legit? Probably not. So you've got a couple other primary factors, but those two things, you got interest rates are increasing, and that's what the Fed is setting today. A 0.75% or 75 basis point increase is devastating. It's going to devastate a lot of things. I'll be watching the stock market. I'll be watching crypto. I'm also, let's check this. I'm going to check this out here. I posted a tweet yesterday. No, I'm sorry. I posted a tweet on June 10th. Okay. Let me see if I can share the screen here. Share screen. And then we'll go to Rags to Riches. So this tweet that I posted basically said this. It said, Fed raises rates next week. This could be higher than 50 basis points. You may want to wait until that info comes out to make any substantial moves. I got a little bit of pushback about that. A lot of people said, hey, you know what, that's probably not going to be the case. That's pretty extreme. But we just found out, it seems that this information has kind of been leaked beforehand, before the actual announcement. So we'll kind of see what happens here with that. I think yesterday I tweeted something to that effect as well. This is just kind of looking like a perfect storm. Looking like a perfect storm to really crash everything. The stock market crash will come out of nowhere, and the underlying causes will be studied for a century. It's true. It's going to be ugly, folks. It's going to be freaking ugly. Let's check chat here. Let's see what's going on. We've got about, 15 minutes until Jerome Powell comes live and then gives his justification, which we've already known. The Church of Universal Oneness. Damn it, I just liked, but at least I red flagged you on Pulse Hot List. If you guys haven't checked out Pulse Hot List, cool new website. It's basically a ranking website for crypto projects and crypto influencers on the Pulse chain. And for some reason, they put me on there. So what I'm asking you to do is go to Pulse Hot List, and you can go to my profile. And I want you, there's an emoji, okay? So you can upvote me by doing a fire emoji or a moon rocket emoji, or you can downvote me by doing a red flag. I want everybody here to downvote me. I want everybody to go there and give me a red flag, please. I want to be at the bottom of that list. Terrafin, what is up, man? What is going on? Godfather J6. Yo, what's up, fam? Let's do this. Absolutely. Terrafin. What's good, Rat? Yo, David, what's up, man? What's up, man? David, I know you're like taking off from work. You're probably just doing bicep curls like right now as we're talking. You're like, I gotta get my 1200 in before dinner. Hook shot. What up, B? Played golf and missed the live front porch stream. Well, here we are. We are going to live stream with no interruption. I won't put my opinion in there, I don't think, unless just something crazy happens. Won't put my opinion in there until after Jerome Powell's done, or he just gets redundant. David James, what's going on, everybody? Hope you brought David James says, hope you brought lube. Joe Venuto, remove the Band-Aid all at once. Now we got to think about this. Isn't that kind of what we want to do? Like, if we look at this inflation chart, let's look. Let's look at this thing. Pretty gnarly. Pretty damn gnarly. They've got to get extreme with this, man. They've got to get extreme with this. Chart. Let's do, what do we want to do? A line chart? Let's do a line chart. Yeah. What's a better one? I don't like this. It doesn't really show what's happening here. Let's do this. Where are you at, man? There it is. Oh, sorry, that was 4.2. This is 6.2. All right, reaches 35-year high. No, what are you talking about? Reaches 40-year high. There she is. There's that beauty. Let me save this. Save image as. I'm going to save it, and then I'm going to open it. Maximize. All right, and then let's go to Stream Yard of Streams. Let me try to share this. I don't know. There it is. There it is, guys. There is the money. So now you understand why they got a 275 basis points. I mean, it didn't even stutter. Did not even stutter. Just shooting up out of nowhere. The next time you hear a bunch of politicians say that after printing more money than they printed in the past 70 years in like 18 months, the next time you hear them say inflation's fine, it's going to be under control, don't worry about it, you might want to think twice. Now you have the experience to back it up. Here's what's really cool about this whole situation. I always say that it takes people a long time to be able to cut through the BS. And it's because you got to be on this earth. You got to be on this earth to hear everybody's statements. You got to live long enough to be able to see who got it right and who got it wrong. When you're on this earth long enough and you're paying attention long enough, the truth becomes very clear to you. The truth becomes very clear. You're able to see who's telling a lie. You're able to see who's just saying the right things or saying the easy things instead of saying the hard things. And the hard things are the things that bring pain, but they're also the truth. Also the truth. If you just joined here, 10 minutes, 9 minutes here, Jerome Powell is supposed to hop on. Let me check and see if my live stream feed's going on here. All right. Not yet. It's going to happen soon, though. Make sure. Pain is inbound. Let me check the S&P here. Let me see if they're already reacting to this. Oh my gosh. CNBC chart suggests it's going to be a very nice summer for stocks, Jim Cramer says. It's just crazy, dude. S&P. Okay. They're waiting to see here. They are waiting to see. Now, wait, 2 p.m. it fell off. Fell off pretty damn hard. All right, let's go to Trading View. Let's check crypto. Let's check this real quick. If you guys just joined me, we got about 9 minutes left. 9 minutes left until we get to hear it from the mouth of the babe. All right, Bitcoin. Ooh, Bitcoin's getting hurt right now. What has it done in the past hour? Yeah, we got a nice little red candle on the hour. We'll see, folks. Right after this announcement, here's the question though: was all of this pain that we've seen over the past couple of days because they already knew that it was going to go up to 75 basis points? I mean, I talked to a lot of people on Twitter about it, and they thought I was crazy, but here it is, 75 basis points. Let's check it out here. Let's do this. I'm going to check out chat. Hex Rockstar, let's go. Mobius, what's up? JR, I'm new. I don't know what to do. We'll start by not commenting, please. Joe Venuto, 75 is breaking news on Fox Business. Suzanne Hexkin. Dougie Peach, get low. Apple bottom. No, I'm just kidding. Hex Hoarder, when is the next one supposed to take place? Next month. Wrecked. Yep. Sandy B. Popcorn, anyone? Howdy, y'all. What's the one thing you don't say on an airplane? You never say. You see your friend, his name's Jack. Be careful how you say hello to him on a plane. Popcorn, anyone? 75. Here we go. Terrafin in the house. HP Morgan. Hey, family. Don't subscribe. Bunch of degens. Bunch of miscreants. Bunch of horrible, disgusting people. No more rainbows and unicorns. No more. Here it goes. Woo! Y'all ready for this? Opportunity of a lifetime. Opportunity appears getting ready for the Cubs game pre-party. Oh, man. I have massive amounts of jealousy there. NFTs. David Lee says, thank you, Sandy B. Janet and Muff Diverstein. I can stay retarded longer than they can stay solvent. Thank you, Janet Yellen, for making that appearance. I think somebody butchered your last name, but who am I to say? Sandy B. 369. What's up, man? What's up? Dow is tanking. You are right. Dow is taking a tank. That news has come out. Aren't you glad? Aren't you glad you guys held off on making any big moves this week until Wednesday, like we talked about? This is why. This is where things start getting weird. All right, let's check my live stream feed here. Clown show coming. Clown show incoming in 5 minutes. We're going to go live. We're going to stream this. We're going to have a reaction here. We're going to talk. We're going to see what's up. Should be interesting. Here we go. Wall Street just reacted, and the Dow is in a free fall. Hexmatics, we are Hexkins. No need to panic. We can stay positive. Whoop, whoop. That's the cool thing, guys. That's the cool thing. We saw this coming. We knew what the expectations should be, which is it was going to be pain, and we knew it. As long as we stick to our plan, we can make it out of this just fine. It's good. Just stick to your plan. This could be the biggest recession of most of our lives. What's up and coming over the next year or so. But this is also simultaneously the biggest opportunity of our lives. This could be the biggest opportunity of your life. If you were around in 2017 in terms of the crypto markets, you might have made a big old chunk of change. And if you were smart and didn't nuke your account and you got that big old chunk of change, and you're here for this bear market, this is where you deploy that capital in a big way. And then poof, it's like magic. You go woke, you go broke, you stay on that US dollar, it's going to eat you up, it's going to spit you up and freaking eat you up and spit you up and tear you and just destroy and spit you out. Unhexable, sup, dudes? Meist Sonig, what's up? Construction takes a big hit. Oh, man, gosh. I feel so bad for those construction guys. After 2008, it took a long time for people to get the confidence back to get into that industry. The bubble's about to pop, man. Luckily, I think there is actual demand for housing because they stopped building so much back then. But I'm not sure if that demand is going to overcome the pain that they're about to see. 1.65% increase. I don't think that. It's 0.75 basis or 75 basis points. They seem to be great at that, blaming everyone else. BTC and ETH falling. I hope housing prices come down for the buyers that need one. It's going to get weird. All right, 3 minutes here. We're about to go live. When it pops up with this live stream here, we'll get it in here for you. Live in 3 or 4 minutes. Free falling, 'cause I'm free. Y'all, I know I got it. I know I need a record deal. If you guys know anybody important, just send them my way. It's like what? 2 degrees of separation these days. What's up, bro? Great street, bro. Yeah, we're doomed. You have the clowns running the show, and it really hit the roof now. You are right about that. Suzanne Hexkin, it's exactly what's happening now in Europe. When are we going to grow up? When are we going to learn? When are we going to learn that this redistributive, fiscally irresponsible, fiscally discretionary policy wrecks people? When are people going to wake up? This is the result of people coming out of university since the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s being indoctrinated in a system of economics that is completely out of control. Now, I'm not actually qualified to speak much on that because I did not go to school for economics. I took economics classes in college, but I did not do them now. I've read a lot. But guys, come on. This is going to be studied. We're living in it right now. Get ready to deploy some capital. Stay working hard. You're going to be good to go. This man is becoming a legend. Let's go, Mista. Ari Gents, Gal. Yo, what's up? Crypto heartbeat and later 70 interest rates on home loans were 15 to 20%. I posted something yesterday that mentioned that they were at 6.3% before this rate hike. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to kind of go live here. We are going to go live. Stop sharing. We're going to share this. And I will shut up and put myself on mute until it's over. Let's wait for him to come on here. Make sure the volume's good. And until that time, we'll just go ahead and scroll on down here. Tragic. This was inevitable, sad to say. Kicking the van down the road is not a long-term solution. They've got no ways out, man. They can't print more money. They can't raise taxes. The problem is, as these rate hikes go up, do you realize that the amount of money that the federal government has to pay on these non-fixed loans, interest rate loans, that goes up too? So it really, really hurts the federal government. So they got to get this done as soon as possible so rates can drop back down, right? Now, I'm going to make a point maybe after this that this is quite possibly the perfect storm. This is the perfect storm for Pulse Chain. If you don't know what Pulse Chain is, I know I used a lot of hashtags on Twitter. Might have some folks that come out, from different places. And here he is. Let's just be quiet.
Good afternoon. I will begin with one overarching message. We at the Fed understand the hardship that high inflation is causing. We're strongly committed to bringing inflation back down, and we're moving expeditiously to do so. We have both the tools we need and the resolve that it will take to restore price stability on behalf of American families and businesses. The economy and the country have been through a lot over the
All
past
right,
two and a
bear
half
with me
years.
here, guys.
Through
I don't think
resilient.
that their volume's
It
working
is
because I'm not
essential
even
that we bring
picking up
inflation
volume.
down if we are to have
I'm
a
going to
sustained
unshare this
period
and see
of
if we can
strong
hear
labor
it.
actions after briefly reviewing economic developments. Overall economic activity edged down in the first quarter as unusually sharp swings in inventories and net exports more than offset continued strong underlying demand. Recent indicators suggest that real GDP growth has picked up this quarter, with consumption spending remaining strong. In contrast, growth in business fixed investment appears to be slowing, and activity in the housing sector looks to be softening, part reflecting higher mortgage rates. The tightening in financial conditions that we've seen in recent months should continue to temper growth and help bring demand into better balance with supply. As shown in our summary of economic projections, FOMCs have marked down their projections for economic activity, with the median projection for real GDP growth running below 2% through 2024. The labor market has remained extremely tight, with the unemployment rate near a 50-year low, job vacancies at historical highs, and wage growth elevated. Over the past 3 months, employment rose by an average of 408,000 jobs per month, down from the average pace seen earlier in the year, but still robust. Improvements in labor market conditions have been widespread, including for workers at the lower end of the wage distribution, as well as for African Americans and Hispanics. Labor demand is very strong, while labor supply remains subdued, with the labor force participation rate little changed since January. FOMC participants expect supply and demand conditions in the labor market to come into better balance, easing the upward pressures on wages and prices. The median projection in the SEP for the unemployment rate rises somewhat over the next few years, moving from 3.7% at the end of this year to 4.1% in 2024, levels that are noticeably above the March projections. Inflation remains well above our longer run goal of 2%. Over the 12 months ending in April, total PCE prices rose 6.3%, excluding the volatile food and energy categories. Core prices rose 4.9%. In May, the 12-month change in the consumer price index came in above expectations at 8.6%, and the change in the core CPI was 6%. Aggregate demand is strong. Supply constraints have been larger and long-lasting than anticipated, and price pressures have spread to a broad range of goods and services. The surge in prices of crude oil and other commodities that resulted from Russia's invasion of Ukraine is boosting prices for gasoline and food and is creating additional upward pressure on inflation. And COVID-related lockdowns in China are likely to exacerbate supply chain disruptions. FOMC participants have revised up their projections for inflation this year, particularly for total PCE inflation, given developments in food and energy prices. The median projection is 5.2% this year and falls to 2.6% next year and 2.2% in 2024. participants continue to see risks to inflation as weighted to the upside. The Fed's monetary policy actions are guided by our mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. My colleagues and I are acutely aware that high inflation imposes significant hardship, especially on those least able to meet the higher costs of essentials like food, housing, and transportation. We are highly attentive to the risks high inflation poses to both sides of our mandate, and we're strongly committed to returning inflation to our 2% objective. Against the backdrop of the rapidly evolving economic environment, our policy has been adapting, and it will continue to do so. At today's meeting, the committee raised the target range for the federal funds rate by 0.75 of a percentage point, resulting in a 1.5 percentage point increase in the target range so far this year. The committee reiterated that it anticipates that ongoing increases in the target range will be appropriate. And we are continuing the process of significantly reducing the size of our balance sheet, which plays an important role in firming the stance of monetary policy. Coming out of our last meeting in May, there was a broad sense on the committee that a 0.5 percentage point increase in the target range should be considered at this meeting if economic and financial conditions evolved in line with expectations. We also stated that we were highly attentive to inflation risks and that we would be nimble in responding to incoming data and the evolving outlook. Since then, inflation has again surprised to the upside. Some indicators of inflation expectations have risen, and projections for inflation this year have been revised up notably. In response to these developments, the committee decided that a larger increase in the target range was warranted at today's meeting. This continues our approach of expeditiously moving our policy rate up to more normal levels, and it will help ensure that longer-term inflation expectations remain well anchored at 2%. As shown in the SEP, the median projection for the appropriate level of the federal funds rate is 3.4% at the end of this year, a percentage point and a half higher than projected in March, and 0.9 percentage point above the median estimate of its longer run value. The median projection rises further to 3.8% at the end of next year and declines to 3.4% in 2024, still above the median longer run value. Of course, these projections do not represent a committee plan or decision, and no one knows with any certainty where the economy will be a year or more from now. Over coming months, we will be looking for compelling evidence that inflation is moving down, consistent with inflation returning to 2%. We anticipate that ongoing rate increases will be appropriate. The pace of those changes will continue to depend on the incoming data and the evolving outlook for the economy. Clearly, today's 75 basis point increase is an unusually large one, and I do not expect moves of this size to be common. From the perspective of today, either a 50 basis point or a 75 basis point increase seems most likely at our next meeting. We will, however, make our decisions meeting by meeting, and will continue to communicate our thinking as clearly as we can. Our overarching focus is using our tools to bring inflation back down to our 2% goal and to keep longer-term inflation expectations well anchored. Making appropriate monetary policy in this uncertain environment requires a recognition that the economy often evolves in unexpected ways. Inflation has obviously surprised to the upside over the past year, and further surprises could be in store. We therefore will need to be nimble in responding to incoming data and the evolving outlook. And we will strive to avoid adding uncertainty to what is already an extraordinarily challenging and uncertain time. We are highly attentive to inflation risks and determined to take the measures necessary to restore price stability. The American economy is very strong and well positioned to handle tighter monetary policy. To conclude, we understand that our actions affect communities, families, and businesses across the country. Everything we do is in service to our public mission. We at the Fed will do everything we can to achieve our maximum employment and price stability goals. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Howard Schneider with Reuters. Two related questions. Chair Powell, did you feel you boxed yourself in with the language you used at the last press conference on 50 basis point hikes in June and July? And would you please give us as detailed a sense you can of what role you played in reshaping market expectations so quickly on Monday?
So, as you know, we always aim to provide as much clarity as we can about our policy intentions, subject to the inherent uncertainty in the economic outlook, because we think monetary policy is more effective when market participants understand how policy will evolve, when they understand our objective function, our reaction function. And in the current highly unusual circumstances with inflation well above our goal, we think it's helpful to provide even more clarity than usual, again, subject to uncertainty in the outlook. So, and I think over the course of this year, financial markets have responded and have generally shown that they understand the path we're laying out. Of course, it remains data dependent, and so that's what we generally think about guidance, and that's why we offer it. And of course, when I offered that guidance at the last meeting, I did say that it was subject to the economy performing about in line with expectations. I also said that if the economy performed, if data came in worse than expected, then we would consider moving even more aggressively. So we got the CPI data and also some data on inflation expectations late last week, and we thought for a while, and we thought, well, this is the appropriate thing to do. So then the question is, what do you do? And do you wait 6 weeks to do it at the next meeting? And I think the answer is that's not where we are with this. So we decided we needed to go ahead, and so we did. And that's really how we made the decision.
Thanks for taking our questions. Gina Smirlik with the New York Times. I guess I wonder if you could describe for us a little bit how you're deciding how aggressive you need to be. So obviously 75 today. What did 75 achieve that 50 wouldn't have? And why not just go for a full percentage point at some point?
Sure. So if you take a step back, what we're looking for is compelling evidence that inflationary pressures are abating and that inflation is moving back down. And we'd like to see that in the form of a series of declining monthly inflation readings. That's what we're looking for. And by this point, we had actually been expecting to see clear signs of at least inflation flattening out and ideally beginning to decline. We've said that we'd be data dependent, focused on incoming data, highly attentive to inflation risks, the things that I mentioned to Howard moments ago. So contrary to expectations, inflation again surprised to the upside. Some indicators of inflation expectations have risen, and projections of this year have moved up notably. So we thought that strong action was warranted at this meeting, and today we delivered that in the form of a 75 basis point rate hike, as I mentioned. So what was the point of it really is this. We've been moving rates up expeditiously to more normal levels. And over the course of the 7 months since we pivoted and began moving in this direction, we've seen financial conditions tighten, and appropriately so. But the federal funds rate, even after this move, is at 1.6%. So again, the committee is moving rates up expeditiously to more normal levels. And we came to the view that we'd like to do a little more front-end loading on that. So I think that the SEP gives you the levels that people think are appropriate at given points in time. This was really about the speed with which you would get there. So as I mentioned, we 75 basis points today. I said the next meeting could well be about a decision between 50 and 75. That would put us at the end of the July meeting, in that range in that more normal range. And that's a desirable place to be because you begin to have more optionality there about the speed with which you would proceed going forward. Just talking about the SEP for a second, what it really says is that committee participants widely would like to see policy at a modestly restrictive level at the end of this year. And that's 6 months from now. And so much data and so much can happen. So remember how highly uncertain this is. But so that is generally a range of 3 to 3.5%. That's where people are. And that's what they want to see, knowing what they know now and understanding that we need to show resolve, but also be flexible to incoming data as we see it. If things are better, we don't need to do that much. So And if they're not, then we either do that much or possibly even more. But in any case, it will be very data dependent. Then you're looking at next year, and what you're seeing is people see a bit more tightening and in a range of maybe 3.5% to 4%. And that's generally what people see as the appropriate path for getting inflation under control and starting back down and then getting back down to 2%. So 75 basis points seem like the right thing to do at this meeting, and that's what we did.
Steve Leisman, CNBC. Thank you for taking my question, Mr. Chairman. You have not used the phrase in a long time, monetary policy is in a good place, which is a phrase that you used to use often. Now that the committee is projecting 4% or 3.8% next year in terms of the funds rate, which is similar to where the market is now, the futures market of 4% funds rate next year, do you think that's a level that is going to be sufficiently high enough to deal with and bring down the inflation problem? And just as a follow-up, could you break that apart for me? How much of that is restrictive and how much of that is a normal positive rate that ought to be embedded or not, in your opinion, in the funds rate? Thank you.
Sure. So the question really is, how high does the rate really need to go? And this is, the estimates on the committee are in that range of 3.5% to 4%. And how do you think about that? Well, you can think about the longer run neutral rate. You can compare it to that, and we think that's in the mid twos. You can look, frankly, at broader financial conditions. You can look at, asset prices. You can look at the effect you're having on the economy, rates, asset prices, credit spreads. All of those things go into that. You can also look at the yield curve and ask, all along the yield curve, where is the policy rate? So for much of the yield curve now, real rates are positive. That's not true at the short end. At the short end of the yield curve in the early years, you don't have you have negative rates still. So that really is one data point. It's one part of financial conditions. So I think I have to look at it this way. We move the policy rate, that affects financial conditions, and that affects the economy. We have, of course, rigorous ways to think about it, but ultimately it comes down to, do we think financial conditions are in a place where they're having the desired effect on the economy? And that desired effect is, we'd like to see, demand moderating. Demand is very hot still in the economy. We'd like to see the labor market getting better in balance between supply and demand. And that can happen both from supply and demand. Right now, demand is substantially higher than available supply, though. So we feel that there's a role for us in moderating demand. Those are the things we can affect with our policy tools. There are many things we can't affect, and those would be, the things, the commodity price issues that we're having around the world due to the war in Ukraine and the fallout from that, and also just all of the supply side things that are still, pushing upward on inflation. So that's really how I would think about it.
But does 3.8%, 4% get it done? Does it get the job done of breaking back inflation?
I think it's certainly in the range of plausible numbers. I think we'll know when we get there, really. I mean, honestly, that would be, you would have positive real rates, I think, and inflation coming down by then. I think you'd have positive real rates across the curve. I think that the neutral rate is pretty low these days. So I would think it would, but you know what? We're gonna find that out empirically. We're not going to be completely model driven about this. We're going to be looking at this, keeping our eyes open and reacting to incoming data, both on financial conditions and on what's happening in the economy.
Thanks. Nick Timmeros of the Wall Street Journal. Chair Powell, you've said that you like your policy to work through expectations, and now obviously this decision was something quite different from how you and almost all of your colleagues had set those expectations during the intermeeting period. And I know you just said that what changed was really the inflation data, the inflation expectations data, but I'm wondering, on the inflation expectations data, was there something you saw that was unsettling enough to risk eroding the credibility of your verbal guidance by doing something so different from what you had socialized before?
So if you look at we look at a broad range of inflation expectations. So you've got the public, you've got surveys of the public and of experts, and you've also got market-based. And I think if you look across that broad range of data, what you see is that expectations are still in the place, very much in the place, where short-term inflation is going to be high, but comes down sharply over the next couple of years. That's really where inflation expectations are. And also, as you get away from this episode, they get back down close to 2%. And so this is really very important to us that that remain the case. And I think if you look for most measures, most of the time, that's what you see. If we even see a couple of indicators that bring that into question, we take that very seriously. We do not take this for granted. We take it very seriously. So the preliminary Michigan reading, it's a preliminary reading. It might be revised. Nonetheless, it was quite eye-catching, and we noticed that. We also noticed that the index of common inflation expectations at the board has moved up after being pretty flat for a long time. So we're watching that, and we're thinking, this is something we need to take seriously. And that is one of the factors, as I mentioned, one of the factors in our deciding to move ahead with 75 basis points today was what we saw in inflation expectations. We're absolutely determined to keep them anchored at 2%. That was one of the reasons. The other was just the CPI reading.
So if you saw a movement like that again, another tick up in inflation expectations, would that put a 75 or even 100 basis point increase in play at your next meeting?
I'll just say we're going to react to the incoming data and appropriately, I think. So I wouldn't want to put a number on what that might be. The main thing is to get rates up, and then pretty soon we'll be in an area where we're, I think, as you get closer to the end of the year, you're in a range where you've got restrictive policy, which is appropriate. 40-year highs in inflation. We think that policy is going to need to be restrictive, and we don't know how restrictive. So I think that's how we'll take it.
Hi, Chair Powell. Neil Irwin from Axios. Thanks for taking our questions. The late-breaking kind of decision to go to 75 basis points, do you worry that that will make policy guidance a less effective tool in the future? And should we think of that as a kind of symmetrical reaction function if we start to get soft readings on inflation, or if the labor market starts to roll over?
To take your second question first, yes. I mean, I think we're resolved to take this on, but we're going to be flexible in the implementation of it. Sorry, and your question was guidance. So again, the overall exercise is that we try to provide as much clarity about our policy intentions as we can, because we think that makes monetary policy work better. It's always a trade-off, because you have to live with that guidance. And so you do it, and it helps a lot of the time. I frankly think this year has been a demonstration of how well it can work. With us having really just done a very little in the way of raising interest rates, financial conditions have tightened quite significantly through the expectations channel, as we've made it clear what our plans are. So I think that's been a very healthy thing to be happening. So, and I would hope that it's always going to be, any guidance that we give is always going to be subject to things working out about as we expect. And in this particular situation, we're looking for something specific, and that is progress on inflation. We want to see progress. We want to see inflation can't go down until it flattens out, and that's what we're looking to see. And if we don't see that, then that's the kind of thing that will cause, even if we don't see progress for a longer period, that could cause us to react. But we will soon enough. We will be seeing some progress at some point, and we'll react appropriately to that too. But I would like to think, though, that our guidance is still credible, but it's always going to be conditional on what happens. This is an unusual situation to get some data late during blackout, pretty close, very close to our meeting. Very unusual, to one that would actually change the outcome. So I've only seen, in my 10 years plus here at the Fed, I've only seen something like that, even close to that, one or two times. So I don't think it's something that'll come up a great deal.
Thank you so much for taking our questions. Colby Smith with the Financial Times. On the clear and convincing threshold for the inflation trajectory, what is the level of realized inflation that meets that criteria? And how is the committee thinking about the potential trade-off of much higher unemployment than even what's forecasted in the SEP? if inflation is not moderating, at this acceptable pace?
So the second part I didn't get.
If what's the potential trade-off with higher unemployment than even what's forecasted in the SEP if inflation is not moderating at an acceptable pace?
Right. So what we want to see is a series of declining monthly readings for inflation, and we like to see inflation headed down. So, but and right now our policy rate is well below neutral, right? So, soon enough we'll have our policy rate. Let's assume the world works about like the SEP says. The policy rate will be up where we think it should be, and then the question would be, do you slow down? Does it make you, you'll be making these judgments about, is it appropriate now to slow down from 50 to 25, let's say, or speed up? So that's the kind of thinking we'll be doing, and we're looking, ultimately, we're not going to declare victory until we see a series of these, really see convincing evidence, compelling evidence that inflation is coming down. And that's what I mean by, that's what it would take for us to say, okay, we think this job is done, because we saw, and frankly, we saw last year inflation came down over the course of the summer and then turned right around and went back up. So I think we're going to be careful about declaring victory. But again, the implementation of our policy is going to be flexible and sensitive to incoming data.
Are you more concerned now that to bring down inflation, it's going to require more than just some pain at this point?
So again, I think that I do think that their objective, and this is what's reflected in the SEP, but our objective really is to bring inflation down to 2% while the labor market remains strong. I think that what's becoming more clear is that many factors that we don't control are going to play a very significant role in deciding whether that's possible or not. And there I'm thinking, of course, of commodity prices, the war in Ukraine, supply chain, things like that, where we really can't, the monetary policy stance doesn't affect those things. So, but having said that, there is a path. There's a path for us to get there. It's not getting easier. It's getting more challenging because of these external forces, and that path is to move demand down, and you have a lot of surplus demand in take for example in the labor market. So you have two job vacancies essentially for every person actively seeking a job, and that has led to a real imbalance in wage negotiating. You could get to a place where that ratio was at a more normal level, and you would expect to see those wage pressures move back down to a level where people are still getting healthy wage increases, real wage increases, but at a level that's consistent with 2% inflation. So that's a possibility, and you could say the same thing about some of the product markets where there's just excess capacity, and where the strong demand has gone into where they're capacity constrained, right? So you have effectively what we think of as a vertical supply curve or close to it. So demand comes in and it's very strong, and it shows up in higher prices, not higher quantities, not more cars, because they can't make the cars because they don't have the semiconductors. So in principle, that could work in reverse. When demand comes down, you could see, and it's not guaranteed, but you could see prices coming down more than the typical economic relationships that you see in the textbooks would suggest, because of the unusual situation we're in on the supply side. So there's a pathway there. It is not going to be easy, and again, it's our objective, but as I mentioned, it's going to depend to some extent on factors we don't control.
Hi, Chair Powell. Thank you for taking our questions. Rachel Siegel from the Washington Post. So the new projections show the unemployment rate ticking up through 2024. Is a higher unemployment rate necessary in order to combat inflation? And what is lost if the unemployment rate has to go up and people lose their jobs in order to control inflation? Thank you.
So you're right. In the SEP, we have unemployment going up to the median is 4.1%. There are, of course, a range of actual forecasts, And I would characterize that if you were to get inflation down to, you know, on its way down to 2% and the unemployment rate went up to 4.1%, that's still a, you know, historically low level. You know, we hadn't seen unemployment rates below 4% until a couple of years ago. We'd seen it for like 1 year in the last 50. So the idea that, you know, 3.6% is historically low in the last century. So a 4.1% unemployment rate with inflation well on its way to 2%, I think that would be I think that would be a successful outcome. So we're not looking to have a higher unemployment rate, but I would say that I would certainly look at that as a successful outcome. You know, we don't seek to put people out of work. Of course, we never think too many people are working and fewer people need to have jobs. But we also think that you really cannot have the kind of labor market we want without price stability. And we have to go back and establish price stability so we can have that kind of labor market. And that's a labor market where, you know, where workers are getting wage increases. Maybe the workers at the lower end of the spectrum are getting the biggest wage increases, as they were before the pandemic, where participation is high, where there's lots of job opportunities, where it's just I mean, the labor market we had before the pandemic that's what we want to get back to. And you see, you know, disparities between various groups at historic lows. We'd love to get back to that place. But to get there, it's not going to happen with, you know, with the levels of inflation we have. So we have to restore that. And it really is in service in the medium and longer term of the kind of labor market we want and hope to achieve.
Hi, Chair Powell, Matthew Bosa with Bloomberg. So as you just mentioned, the committee is now projecting a 0.5 percentage point rise in the unemployment rate in the SEPs over the next couple of years. And it removed a line from its policy statement about thinking that the labor market can remain strong while it tightens policy. You just mentioned that that is still your objective, though. So I'm wondering if you could explain why that line was removed from the statement, and also whether this means the FOMC is trying to induce a recession now to bring inflation down.
Not trying to induce a recession now. Let's be clear about that. We're trying to achieve 2% inflation consistent with a strong labor market. That's what we're trying to do. So let me talk about that sentence. Clearly, it's our goal to bring about 2% inflation while keeping the labor market strong, right? And that's kind of what the SEP says. That the SEP has inflation getting down to a little above 2% in 2024 with unemployment at 4.1%. So, and this is a strong labor market. This is a good labor market. And as I mentioned, there are pathways to do it. But those pathways have become much more challenging due to factors that are not under our control. Again, thinking here of the fallout from the war in Ukraine, which has brought a spike in, you know, prices of energy, food, fertilizer, industrial chemicals, and also just the supply chains more broadly, which have been larger and longer lasting than anticipated. So the sentence that we deleted said that we believe that appropriate monetary policy effectively alone can bring about the result of 2% inflation with a strong labor market. And so much of it is really not down to monetary policy. The sentence isn't, it kind of says on its face that monetary policy alone can do this. And that just didn't seem appropriate, so we took the sentence out.
And given the new projections for the unemployment rate, could you talk a little bit about what accounts for, you know, such reduced confidence against, say, a month ago or 3 months ago that inflation will largely normalize on its own as these supply side issues get worked out? Thanks.
Well, yeah, I think you've seen, again, we've been expecting progress and we didn't get that. We got sort of the opposite. So I also think the situation really since the consequences of the Ukraine war become more and more clear, what you're seeing is the situation getting more difficult. And you look around the world, I mean, lots of countries are looking at inflation of 10%. And it's largely due to commodities prices, but all over the world, you're seeing these effects. And so, and we're seeing them here. Gas prices, you know, all-time highs and things like that. That's not something we can do something about. So that is really, and by the way, Headline inflation is important for expectations. The public's expectations, why would they be distinguishing between core inflation and headline inflation? Core inflation is something we think about because it is a better predictor of future inflation. But headline inflation is what people experience. They don't know what core is. Why would they? They have no reason to. So that's expectations are very much at risk due to high headline inflation. So the environment has become more difficult, clearly, in the last 4 or 5 months. And hence the need for the policy actions that we took today, hence our resolution to get rates up and ultimately get them to where we think they need to be in coming months.
Thanks, Chair Powell. Edward Lawrence with Fox Business. I want to ask you, you talked about CPI going to 8.6%. The retail sales surprised the market by falling, and then revisions to the previous months were down. Are you hearing from contacts about consumers slowing spending or changing their habits?
So we're of course watching very, very carefully for that, and looking at the retail sale, the big store numbers and all that kind of thing. And so, but I think the fair summary of what we see is you see continuing shifts in consumption. You see some things sales going down, but overall spending is very strong. The consumer's in really good shape financially. They're spending. There's no sign of a broader slowdown that I can see in the economy. People are talking about it a lot. Consumer confidence is very low. That's probably related to gas prices, and also just stock prices to some extent for other people. But that's what we're seeing. We're not seeing a broad slowdown. We see job growth slowing, but it's still at quite robust levels. We see the economy slowing a bit, but still growth levels, healthy growth levels.
So then as you are raising rates in this economy, how closely are you watching consumer spending, or is there another indicator that you're watching more closely?
It would be hard to watch anything much more closely than we watch consumer spending, but we watch everything. We watch business fixed investment, which actually has softened a bit. We're responsible for watching everything, but consumption is 60-some% of the economy, 2/3 of the economy. So naturally we spend a lot of time on that. And again, there's a lot going on. There are a lot of flows back and forth, but ultimately it does appear that the U.S. economy is in a strong position and well positioned to deal with higher interest rates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Michael McKee from Bloomberg Radio and Television. Are you targeting headline inflation now or core inflation? In other words, how far would you chase oil prices if they keep going up, if that's going to be the component that drives expectations? Would you risk recession for a headline rate if the core rate is holding steady or starting to go down?
So we're responsible for inflation in the law, and inflation means headline inflation. So that's our ultimate goal. We, of course, like all central banks do, look very, very carefully at core inflation because it's a much better predictor, and it's a much better predictor of where inflation is going, and it's also more relevant to our tools. As I mentioned, the parts that don't go into core are mostly outside the scope of our tools, so we look at that. But the current situation is particularly difficult because of what I mentioned about expectations. We can't affect. Really, I mean, the energy prices are set by global commodity prices, and most of food, not all of it, but most food prices are pretty heavily influenced by global commodity prices too. Also other things. So we can't really have much of an effect, but we have to be mindful of the potential effect on inflation expectations from headlines. So it's a very difficult situation to be in, and we can't do much about the difference between the elements that make up headline that are not in core.
Could I just, as a follow-up, get a clarification on the SEP? When the members gave their forecasts, when were they inserted into the record? Were they revised after the CPI or Michigan numbers came out? In other words, does the SEP as we have it now reflect the same factors that led you to go to a 75 basis point move?
the SEP is of one piece. It reflects all of the economic readings. It also reflects the 75 basis point increase. This is important. So people had that in hand when their SEPs were submitted. So in other words, it's not in addition to what's in the SEP. The SEP, everyone's SEP reflects.
Whoa. Woo. Can y'all hear me? Y'all hear me all right? Just real quick here. Real quick. I want to share with you a couple things that just happened. The first thing that I noticed, if you guys noticed a nice little tweet that came out from the White House, President Biden, the president of the United States himself, you know what he says? He says, Wall Street didn't build this country. The middle class built this country, and unions built the middle class. Straight from Joe Biden. Thank you, Joe Biden. Thank you for bringing this country together. You're just brilliant. He might actually be in charge of his own Twitter account. Either that or it's some 20-something-year-old intern who just got indoctrinated straight out of Harvard, and now they're in charge of communications. Another thing, let me just verify this before I even talk about it. You can't even make this stuff up, folks. Top story. Just so happens that it was released 30 minutes ago. Dr. Anthony Fauci tests positive for COVID. Right as all of this was coming out. Can you believe it? Oh, this inflation report is not going to be on CNN or MSNBC. I can't even believe it, man. Oh, it just came out right during this, dude. Okay. All right, let's see just real quick here and we'll tune back in. I want to see how, dude, this is how CNN is spinning this. And now the market loves the Fed news. So much for selling on the Fed's rate hike news. Stocks surged to their highest levels of the day after Jerome Powell suggested that people should not expect that many more rate hikes as large as the one just announced. That is a straight up lie. You guys heard it with me on stream. He said not only are we going to have these into 2023, he's now saying that they could be 50 to 75 basis points moving forward. A straight up lie from CNN. This is from CNN Business's Paul R. LaMonica. Powell did not rule out the possibility of another 75 basis point hike in July, but he added that the moves of this size would not be common. Jesus, dude. All right, let's get back to it, guys. You can't make it up. You cannot freaking make this stuff up, folks. It's out of control.
The description of inflation in the statement didn't change between May and June. Thanks.
So clearly, people don't like inflation a lot, and many people are experiencing it really for the first time because we haven't had anything like this kind of inflation in 40 years, and it's really something people don't like, and they're experiencing that, and that's showing up in surveys and in all kinds of ways. And we understand that, and we understand the hardship that people are experiencing from high inflation, and we're determined to do what we can to get inflation back down. So that's really what we're saying. Clearly it's an incredibly unpopular thing, and it's very painful for people. So, I guess what I'm saying is the really critical question from the perspective of doing our job is making sure that the public does have confidence that we have the tools and will use them, and they do work to bring inflation back down over time. It will take some time, we think, to get inflation back down, but we'll do that.
Thank you. Chris Rugaber at Associated Press. You have talked about inflation a few times and mentioned oil prices, China lockdowns. Um, but aside from rises in commodity prices such as gas prices, we're also seeing stickier measures of inflation increasing, such as the Cleveland Fed's median and trimmed mean CPIs. I mean, how persistent do you see those underlying measures of inflation, and how do you expect to, and where do you see those going in the near
Yeah.
future?
So as I mentioned, I think in my opening statement, the inflation has started. It started off in quite narrow, very directly pandemic-related areas, and it's spread now broadly across the economy and into the services sector as well. It was really in the goods sector at the beginning. In particular, you're seeing in travel now. If you've flown on a plane lately, planes are very full and plane tickets are very expensive. Some of that will be passed through of energy prices, but it's so you're experiencing services inflation. Shelter inflation is high. So, the question, and you see the Cleveland measure going up, and many other measures are going up. So it's a time when we're not seeing progress, and we want to see progress, and that's really another part of why we did what we did today, and why the SEP looks like it does, is that we see it as appropriate to get the policy rate up to restrictive levels, which would be, in the thinking of the committee, somewhere in the range of 3 to 3.5% by year end, and then after that, you see what the rest of the SEP says. So I hope that's responsive to your question.
Hi, Chair Powell, Nancy Marshall-Genzer with Marketplace. Do you still think a softish landing is possible, and how would you define that at this point, considering the revised projections for unemployment, GDP, inflation?
So I think what's in the SEP would certainly meet that test. If you see, you're looking at getting back down to almost a 2% inflation by 2024, and the unemployment rate is still as low as 4.1%. I would call that as meeting that test. Do I still think that we can do that? I do. I think there's. I don't want to be the handicapper here. That is our objective, and I do think it's possible. Like I said, though, I think that events of the last few months have raised the degree of difficulty, created great challenges, and again, the answer to the question, can we still do it? There's a much bigger chance now that it'll depend on fact. On very, very focused on getting inflation back down to 2%, which we think is essential for the benefit of the public, and also to put us on a path back to a sustainably strong labor market like the one we had before the pandemic.
Thank you. Greg Robb from MarketWatch. Chair Powell, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more. Economists are worried that you're kind of hitting the economy with a sledgehammer, and that now there's even more risk of a recession than a 50-50 path of rates. So could you talk a little bit more about that, and what evidence would get you to stop rate hikes and maybe even reverse them?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, financial conditions have tightened over the last 7 months, and that's a good thing, we think. But the federal funds rate, even after this increase, is at 1.6%. So it's hard to see how that is too high of a rate. And even if we did another, we're going to get here by the end of the summer somewhere in the twos probably. Still, that's still a low rate. So that's not a rate that is calculated to bring a recession on. And by then we'll have seen a whole lot more data. As I mentioned a couple times, the committee's views are around a modestly restrictive stance, which would be in the 3 to 3.5% range by the end of this year. But that's conditioned on that being the appropriate thing to do. If we see data going in a different direction, it'll be reflected in our policy, as you see today. We'll be watching if if things go in a direction we don't expect, then we're going to adapt. And I would say this is a highly uncertain environment, extraordinarily uncertain environment. So again, we'll be determined and resolved, but flexible.
Evan Reiser, Market News International. Thank you, Chair Powell. I was wondering if the Fed has initiated a review of the conduct of monetary policy over the last 2 years or so, given the inflation, and will that be shared with the public? And then secondly, given the illiquidity and extraordinary volatility in financial markets, are you concerned that QT will make that worse?
Sorry, what was your question on QT?
Just given the illiquidity and extraordinary volatility in financial markets, whether QT will make things worse.
So, of course, we've been looking, very carefully and hard at why inflation picked up so much more than expected last year and why it proved so persistent. It's hard to overstate the extent of interest we have in that question, morning, noon, and night. So, but you have to understand the context. Really, the context is this: for decades before the pandemic and the reopening, you had a world where inflation was dominated by disinflationary forces such as declining population or aging demographics, let's call it that, globalization enabled by technology, other factors, low productivity. So, and that's how all the models work. Is decades and decades of data. They look at that. It's a very flat Phillips curve work, and the supply shocks tend to be transient, right? So we have now experienced an extraordinary series of shocks, if you think about it. The pandemic, the response, the reopening, inflation, followed by the war in Ukraine, followed by shutdowns in China, the war in Ukraine potentially having effects for years here. So we're aware that a different set of forces are driving the economy. We have been, obviously, for quite a while, that these forces are different. Inflation's behaving differently. And in our thinking, it really is a question of very strong demand, but you couldn't get this kind of inflation without a change on the supply side, which is there for anybody to see, which is these blockages and shortages and people dropping out of the labor force and things like that. So that's how we're looking at it. And we've done a lot of work internally on and thinking about what all that means. The thing is, you don't know whether those forces are, what extent are they going to be sustained? In other words, will we go back to a world where that looks a little more like the old world, or are we really going to be in a world where major supply shocks go on and on? The history is you see these waves of supply shocks, as you did in the 70s, and then they go away, and sort of there's a new normal and things settle down. But honestly, we don't know what that's going to be. In the meantime, we have to find price stability in this new world and maximum employment in this new world where clearly inflationary forces you're seeing them everywhere. Again, if you look around the world at where inflation levels are, it's absolutely extraordinary. It's not just here. In fact, we're sort of in the middle of the pack. Although I think we have of course a different kind of inflation than other people have, and partly because our economy is stronger and more highly recovered. So that's what we're doing. We've done a lot of introspection and work on that. And sorry, on QT, we've communicated really clearly to the markets about what we're going to do there. Markets seem to be okay with it. We're phasing in. Treasury issuance is down quite a lot from where it's been. So I have no reason to think markets are forward-looking and they see this coming. I have no reason to think it will lead to illiquidity and problems. It seems to be kind of understood and accepted at this point.
Thanks. For the last question, we'll go to Mark.
Mr. Chairman, Mark Hamrick with Bankrate. Wonder what your assessment is about the outlook for the housing market, given the years-long increase in home prices and now the sharp rise in mortgage rates. And all that, of course, given the heightened sensitivity around the housing market, given the fact that it was a trigger for the great financial crisis over a decade ago. Thank you.
Sure. So rates were very low. A good place to start is that rates were very, very low for quite a while because of the pandemic and the need to do everything we could to support the economy when unemployment was 14% and the true unemployment rate was well higher than that. So and that was rates are low, and now they're coming back up to more normal or above levels. So in the meantime, while rates were low and while demand was really high, obviously demand for housing changed from wanting to live in urban areas to some extent to living in single family homes in the suburbs, famously. And so the demand was just suddenly much higher and low. So we saw prices moving up very, very strongly for the last couple of years. So that changes now, and rates have moved up. We're well aware that mortgage rates have moved up a lot, and you're seeing a changing housing market. We're watching it to see what will happen. How much will it really affect residential investment? Not really sure. How much will it affect housing prices? Not really sure. Obviously we're watching that quite carefully. You would think over time. So there's a tremendous amount of supply in the housing market of unfinished homes, and as those come online, whereas the supply of finished homes, the inventory of finished homes that are for sale is incredibly low, historically low. So that it's still a very tight market. So prices may keep going up for a while, even in a world where rates are up. So it's a complicated situation. We watch it very carefully. I would say if you're a home buyer, somebody or a young person looking to buy a home, you need a bit of a reset. We need to get back to a place where supply and demand are back together, and where inflation is down low again, and mortgage rates are low again. So this will be a process whereby we ideally we do our work in a way where the housing market settles in a new place and housing availability and credit availability are at appropriate levels. So thank you very much.
Here we go. Talking. Microphone on. Microphone on. What do you guys think? What do you guys think about all this? Freaking crazy, right? Didn't take responsibility about this at all. Didn't even talk about quantitative easing except for the very end. Quantitative easing is then pulling money out of the economy. And I think that in a big way, quantitative easing is what it's really the ultimate tool for them to cause or stimulate the economy or not. And it's the ultimate tool that they should really never use, frankly. But it's this is a complete clown world, man. This is a complete clown world. They released that information that Fauci gets COVID. Our boy, old president of the United States, old POTUS, he says that unions built the middle class. That is so out of touch, man. Like, that is just crazy to me that he would say something like that. They are so out of touch with what happens on Main Street. Completely out of touch with it. Like, they have no clue. I don't even understand. Ever since the banking crisis of 2008, and I'm going to talk, this guy named Philip Mead talks about this. He's on yankeet.news. Ever since the banking crisis of 2008, the Fed and Congress had been pumping truly huge sums of money into the market, putting the nation into unconscionable debt. This is the two-step process to destroying the American economy. Destroy the capital formation market. So what do you mean by that? When you create too much debt, you overinflate the asset valuations of stocks, then you destroy liquidity, causing wealth destruction, and you take away the ability to invest in new capital projects. Guys, you gotta realize that you're seeing the stock market pump right now. Do not take the bait. Don't take the bait. Don't be stupid here. Okay. You got to understand that this is horrible. This is horrible for a variety of reasons. Specifically in terms of credit. Credit really did help build this country. And it's harder and harder and harder. So by reducing the stock market, you now set the stage for a recession, if not a depression. And the inability to support the economy with new investment leaves you with a dead economy. If you take a look, if you guys wanted to learn a lot about this, David Bratt, he's the chairman of the economics department at Liberty University. He's been talking about this nonstop, and now it's happening. But he's also repeated that the way the Fed has continued to print new money is like transfusing blood through a dead body. Depending on who you're talking to, the nation is either about to pass the point of no return or it already has. The Fed has put off doing even the basic things. The raging discussion over whether or not the Fed will raise interest rates 50 to 75 basis points is as lame as it gets. It doesn't matter. Our economy has been completely castrated at this point, and no amount of production is going to be able to keep up with this artificial, just the clown world that we're living in right now economically. While commentators say that the Fed does not have many tools to work with in order to control the economy, what they do have can work. The cost is the question. They keep debating. Will we have a hard landing or a soft landing? It's rough. It is a rough situation that we live in right now, but we do know, we are aware that this is happening. Our community is aware that this is happening. Thank God for crypto. Thank God for crypto for me, because it caused me to start questioning everything that I knew before cryptocurrency. This would not have got me into learning and teaching and myself and understanding myself what's actually happening. And now that we're here and now that we're understanding and learning these things, I mean, these people, they say, do as I say, not as I do, that type of stuff. I actually kind of feel bad for the Federal Reserve, because it's supposed to be separate. We obviously know that there's many aspects of it that's not, right? They play ball with politicians, but they have to be like rolling their eyes when they see Congress passing these laws that's going to dole out billions and hundreds of billions of dollars to Americans. They got to be like, man, this is not good. This is not a good thing. What the hell are we going to do about this? So in a weird way, you kind of feel bad. And it's like, they're just a placeholder. It really seems like the Federal Reserve is just a placeholder. They're not really calling the shots here. The legislature seems to be calling the shots pretty well. Geez, man. Career at McDonald's, hashtag Mickey D's. This is not Burger King in the United States. You cannot have it your way in the United States. Suckers rally, lights out says. Markets baked. Yeah, they baked in with the big losses the past 2 days. So the thing is, this information got leaked prior to this. And I think that we saw the results of that Monday and Tuesday. Futures on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday. So they leaked it. People reacted. The insiders reacted. You saw the stock market plunge. And what you saw with this was basically, it's just going to be a fake short-term rally, but you can't fight the pressure. Now, if we go, I'm going to show you guys this. This is interesting. They can twist this data and they can screw things up as much as they want, but here's what's difficult. There is some data that so if we're looking at the crypto markets, let me share this with you guys so you can see it. And my camera's overheating. That's why it's all laggy and slow. I apologize. All right. So Bitcoin, let's see here. Bitcoin is up a little bit. Okay. So Bitcoin is up what is it? On the day about 0.2%. So from earlier today, it's up about 10% earlier today. Do not get trapped. Do not get sucked into this. Now, how do we know that you shouldn't get sucked into this? What are people actually doing? Look at the longs. Look at the Bitcoin longs. All right. So we had a huge amount of Bitcoin long spike on the 13th. All right. The 13th was 2 days ago. We haven't seen an increase in Bitcoin longs since then. A very, very small, like 0.62%, nothing. But what about the shorts? Ooh, look at that in the past day. In fact, in the past hour, in the past 2 hours, on the 1 hour chart, those shorts are starting to stack up, folks. So regardless of what you're seeing right now, people are betting right now that the stock market is going to fall off a cliff, much more so than Bitcoin longs, much more so. And I think this is Bitfinex. Yeah, a lot of people short on there. You're going to see that. You're going to see some pumps here. You're going to see Hex. Hex is going to pump. You guys have got to be careful here. At these levels, it's nothing wrong with dollar cost averaging if you're 80% down, but just take things slow, because this is going to be a long time. This is going to be a long time here. You got to be able to survive this out, and you got to make your money stretch. Michael Saylor's gritting his teeth. Yep. I'm pretty sure the bankers are driving the whole show. I don't feel sorry for them. Keep up the good fight. Thanks. Yeah, I don't feel sorry for. I do kind of. I mean, I just can't imagine being the head of a company that you realize you just have like no power. It's you're kind of like a PR person. You're like a PR person for Donald Trump. You're like, no, don't say that. Don't do it. Oh, shoot, I got to go clean this up. But wait, you you did some stuff that I can't clean up here. What is the problem? Can you summarize? Here's the problem. The overarching problem that we have is that we have a monetary policy that allows very few to kind of circumvent the natural processes of the market. And what you had over the past couple of years is you had a massive increase in the money supply. Massive increase in the money supply, amongst some other things. Then you had some black swan events that occurred. The problem is our government has no respect for our monetary system whatsoever. And they're doing just what the Bank of France did. They're doing what the Bank of England did in the past. They're doing what a lot of economies have done in the 21st century. They are debasing the economy by printing out of control. They're putting us further and further into debt by paying for things. Putting us further and further into debt by trying to pay for things that we don't have the money to pay for. And instead of doing the tough thing, instead of doing the political suicide thing, unfortunately, which is get this thing under control and be proper and mature about it and adult-like, instead of doing that, what they're doing is printing money. They're printing money. And that is absolute economic suicide to the amount that they've done. And this has been pushed down generation after generation after generation. The United States came off the gold standard in the 70s. So now we're a fiat currency. We're not backed by anything. All right. And we're just spending out of control. We make up a massive amount of the world's reserves. The global reserves are in in US dollar. And we were losing the confidence of people all around the world. Economically, that's how these wars are going to be waged, guys. Conventional modern warfare, that's gone. It's all cyber, it's all financial. That's what's happening here. They just raised interest rates 75 basis points. Nobody thought that 75 basis points was even a thing that they would do even a month ago. Nobody thought that was going to happen. And here they come. They did it. It happened. It's absolutely happened. And there's nothing that can be done about this. This is bad. This is bad to a level that we have not seen, and the day of reckoning is coming. It's come. You know, as some people said, we might already be in this. Be very, very, very careful with your investments right now. I do not think that we are done with this whatsoever. I will just say that right now. I think that you will see maybe a short-term pump. Well, Bitcoin just went negative on the day. So you'll see these little short-term pumps, and you'll see us fall off a cliff again. You have people like Three Arrows Capital. Three Arrows Capital was highly leveraged with many different exchanges. They had big holdings in Celsius. They had $4.5 billion assets under management, and they got completely wiped out, and they're looking for people right now to help bail them out. Celsius is locked down, and all of these things are intertwined. You're going to have a liquidation event that some people, you don't think it's possible. Some of the prices that you're going to see for some of those cryptos, you don't think it's possible, but it's going to happen, and it's got to happen, man. And the unfortunate thing is, all we're doing is what we've done in the past, and this is just going to get worse and accelerate in the future. We're going to have max pain for a long time, and then the whole process, then the whole cycle is going to start over again. This is why cryptocurrency is so important. It's because we've never had an alternative, and now we have an alternative. Do you guys see that now? What's happening is not normal. What's happening doesn't have to happen. We're just used to recessions, and we're used to crashes every 20 years or so, right? I posted something on Facebook today. I'm going to read it to you guys. And this pretty much makes me feel, I mean, I put it down. This is a little bit of a read. How many of you are used to recessions every 10 to 20 years? Is it just part of the norm? You get stolen from by the federal government slowly over time. You get bled dry over years and years. You get taxed on your wages. You go to the store and get taxed just to use your own money. Inflation increases and your taxes stay the same or increase, but the value of your dollar decreases because of inflation. Your kids get taxed when they die. A recession hits, and whose fault is that recession? And you lose your job. You got no control over that. Your family struggles. You think you're saving money, but you're losing money. You contribute to a 401k that effectively props up the stock market. It's a never-ending flow of deployable capital. On top of that, you have middlemen that you pay hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars over 30 or 40 years to manage your accounts. Middlemen sucking you dry too. The government's sucking you dry. Taxes are sucking you dry. Inflation's sucking you dry. Middlemen are sucking you dry. You got stimulus packages that sacrifice the long term for the short term. It's a way for the government to launder money to the stock market. Launder money. How could you say that? We are the pass-through. They are profiteering to the max. The strength of the dollar increases as the Fed and Treasury rug the economy. How counterintuitive is that? Companies know this, which is why they say cash is king in a recession, because they keep that money in there. And it actually increases in purchasing power because the Fed has to reset the economy to the mean. They debase our currency into oblivion, squeezing every drop of monetary energy until the confidence in the US dollar has dwindled completely. They introduce CBDCs, the fiat currency replacement, central bank digital currencies that can be programmed to be turned on or off in your wallet at any time. They can program your money to not be used for certain items or investments. They can levy extra tax on things that they don't want you spending money on. This is what you'll see. This is what you're going to see occur all across the world, not just the United States, all across the world. Just do a quick Google search of CBDCs in your country. You're going to check. You're going to be able to see it. This is what you're going to see all across the world over the next 10 years. This recession will be the reset point. Fiat will slowly go away, replaced by the harbinger of death, the CBDC. Financial privacy is completely wiped away when society goes cashless. No more transactions offline. You can't transact offline anymore. Why do you think cryptocurrency is important? Think about it. With what I just told you, why do you think crypto is important? Because it offers an alternative. These people do not belong in your pocketbooks. They don't need to see how you spend your money. It's none of their damn business. None of their damn business. Some say it's the fault of the legislature. This is the key point here. Some say it's the fault of the executive branch. Here's the truth. It's your fault and it's my fault for allowing this to happen. We are the ultimate check and balance, but we don't understand the power that we wield. We have been lied to and domesticated and lulled into comfort while the wolves eat with no resistance. Wake up. Knowledge is power. You got to start somewhere now. That's what it's all about, folks. That's everything, top to bottom. If you get somebody that argues with those facts, you got to understand that you were that person one day. Some of you were. You didn't pop out of the womb with all this knowledge. And you got to work to help people. You got to work to educate people. You got to read. You got to understand what's happening. You guys showed up to this little stream that I had today, which was important. This might have been knowledge that 225 of you might not have had right away. And then what happens? What happens? Now, because you heard it come from the man's mouth, you're going to be able to go and watch television, watch TV, and you can see how they spin this stuff for or against. But you got it in your brain now. You can make an educated decision. We know that most of the stuff that he was talking about anyway is complete garbage, but at least you can see how they're going to spin it. And then you can kind of line up and see who you want to trust. You don't depend on me. Don't depend on the news, but you got to get these clues from everywhere and you got to bring them together and you got to make your own decisions here, folks. Yeah. All right. We're an hour and 43 minutes in. We got 232 people. Let's see what we got going on. Probably in October, guys, the printers will be turned back on after DXY pumps to the Fed's desired level. Breaking that resistance would be a good start in every single pump. Don't sell valuables. Let me check this chart here real quick. Let's check the DXY. I think it actually broke at that level. The DXY is the highest that it has been. The highest that it has been. Oh my goodness. Let's check. Let's go to the week. Since the 21st of April, or actually, I'm sorry. Wow. The 21st of October of 2002. Can you believe that? The DXY is the highest that it's been in that entire time. Now, why is that? Why is that? It's because they knew that this was coming, folks. They knew that this was coming. This is what happens when you have to correct things. When you go into this quantitative easing, which is you're just dumping money in the market. They know that that's going to happen. And it's just going to keep going up. Now, what's the scary part? Let's zoom out here. Here's the scary part. Since 1985, actually the high of 1985 to where we are now, the purchasing power of the US dollar is down 40%. So now do you guys understand what I'm saying when they bleed you dry slowly? They say our economy is the best that it's been in XYZ. But when you zoom out, what's the trend? It's down, down, down. What happens on the next rundown when they do the quantitative easing again and they start doling out money and the DXY continues to lose value? If it goes to the bottom of this channel like it did in 2007, like it did in 1995, let's just say, I don't know, how many days is that? We'll go October 85 to here. It's about 6,000 days. Let's go from there to where we currently are. That's about 6,000 or 7,000 days. So let's say, I don't know, let's just say 7,000 days. Where are we going to be at the bottom here from where we are now? 7,000 days? Yeah. In the 30s or 40s, we could be at the bottom, and our dollar, how much would our dollar be worth? Our dollar would be down 70% if it just follows trend and follows suit. This is the data. This is the alpha that they don't want you understanding. Thank God for TradingView. But this is a culmination. The charts don't lie. This is a culmination of all their decisions. It's a summation of all their decisions, and we can see it very clearly. We can see what it's happening. It's kind of scary, folks. Kind of scary here. You're so negative, man. Go rub one out or something. Talking about Bitfinex. Who are you talking about, Willis? This is why you use liquid loans to avoid taxes. He just had to get that shill in there. Oh, God. I'm afraid to give my freaking coins to anybody now, dude. After all this, you guys should be too. Guess which country Biden. All right, let's see these headlines. All right. World. I want to see what these world headlines are. Let's see what they just came out with. Let's do it within tools. Let's do recent. Let's do past hour. Okay. The first one. Exhausted by the news? You may be doom scrolling. Oh my gosh. Ukraine ignores Russian ultimatum to surrender. River trash traps chew at ocean plastic problem. These are the latest headlines. From Blue Ivy to Prince Louise, the A-list children who have outshone their celebrity parents. These are world headlines, folks. Let's do U.S. headlines. Odessa, this is ABC News. Odessa, Texas, without drinking water as temperatures soar. Phil Mickelson at U.S. Open after controversy sparked. Lawmakers review session accomplishments. This is on Google. I just put U.S. headlines. Nothing to do with the economy. This is the first page. Some of these campuses look horrible, Butcher says. The Guardian, Ukraine ignores blah, blah, blah. Cooner, Dr. Anthony Fauci tests positive for COVID-19 because that's more important than a 0.7 or 75 basis point rate hike. On the first page of results on Google, nothing about it. This is what we're dealing with. This is what I see every single freaking day. Gosh, dude. Almighty Hexagon, thank you for the free education. Wish more people took this in. Shake my head. Guys, I'm learning as I go. I am not a professional. I am not very learned when it comes to this stuff, but I'm learning with you guys. Okay. And that's what we got to do, man. That is what we got to do. We're about to see an amazing case of institutional order flow dynamics play out the biggest. Watch them pin DXY above those for resistances. Who knows for how long? Pump and dump. 2020, the recession began. Farms, everything's closing down. Yep. Thank you for the free education. It's all the liquidity pulled out of the markets. It'll go back in. We're going back to turning the TVs off by means. Appreciate the knowledge, brother. Crazy world we live in. Brandon, don't be scared. Liquid loans is fully immutable. Nobody can F with your coins once it's live. Refer to liquidity. I'm not hating. You got to get your shills in when you get them in. I just thought it was hilarious after that diatribe I had towards the federal government that somebody's like, this is why you should. I did another hex stake. Got me some more T-shares and loving it. Liquid loans, Archie S, Hexacat. Yeah, looking for liquid loans. Might be way off now. More T-shares. The right call. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls from all over the world, my name is Brandon. I implore you, do not like, do not comment, do not subscribe. If you go to, what is that, Pulse Hot List, please go to Pulse Hot List, find me on the influencer page, and please downvote me. I want more red flags than anybody on there. Ladies and gentlemen, it's about to get loud. It's about to get real loud. Go ahead and turn your volume down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Goodbye.